So the spot review, our macro fundamental topic's gonna be on awareness. Okay. Um, it'll be split into two VOD reviews. I think it's really long. But this is like a topic that is really close to me, and I think is a problem with a lot of players. Specifically, I'd say probably DPS, off tank, and probably flex supports. I'd say, which is I know is a lot, but yeah, I'd say it's like mainly I'd say the most probably with DPS and off tank. So yeah, it'll be two parts. The first part will be sort of like general awareness, and then after that, I might talk about like more like map awareness, and like understanding advantage and disadvantage awareness, and stuff like that. But the first part is going to be like very general, and then go into some team stuff, some other like cool topics as well. So let's sort of just jump right into it. Okay, so what is awareness, right? The simple way I look at awareness is sort of just like this: is knowing your surroundings, right? And then sort of and like what's going on. Then taking that information, right? And then knowing what to do with it, like having some type of action again. And this goes back to sort of my very thing I always say a lot, right? Which is you have some info, and with that info, you have an action. Okay. So the biggest thing now is like sure you can know your surroundings, what's going on. Like I can do that. I can look around. I can look around while I'm playing the game. So if I like go to like Overwatch, right, you can like look around, like enemies there. Okay, cool. I'm shooting. I can look around and like I'm reloading. I can look around. It's very simple, right? Right. Anyone can look around. But now let's talk about sort of like min maxing this and like making it more optimal. So you can essentially keep when you're not doing something, you have something to do, and you can increase your uptime of like constantly doing something, and hopefully it'll help you be more aware of what's going on and give you more value as a player. So how do you build awareness, right? The first thing I'm going to say we're talking about is min maxing. So what's min maxing? It's sort of like reducing your downtime when you're doing something and increasing your uptime. So the first thing is, like I already mentioned, is reloading. If you are reloading, you do not need to stand, look at the people you already know are there, and keep staring at them. You can reload and you can like move around. So for instance, right, I'm shooting this person over here, right? I started to reload. I can look back there, and I can like come back over here, right, and shoot. Right, so you can like watch your flankers when you're reloading. Like you could check your flanks and then like go back to like help main, right? And this might help you like understand. Oh, there's a tracer there. Oh, there's a somber there, right? Or oh, my ball tracer's over there, and I need to like give them an orb, right? So when you're reloading, right, you can like look around. You can also do a quick 180 and check behind you if you're rotating, right? When you're stabilizing also, right? Like you just took a bunch of damage and like you're trying to live, right? You can also look around. You won't peek main because that's where maybe the damage is coming from, but you can look right and left again, right? And make sure you're fine. You can quickly check your backline, like, if they need help. If you're charging a shot, again, another example here with, I'm just going to use Zen. I have it open, right? Is if you're, enemies there, you're charging a shot, the enemies there, you can look left, right, and then like release, right? So you charge a shot, you can like look here, right? You can look there, then you can like release main, right? So this concept is sort of just like if you're charging a shot, right, you can do something while you're charging it. So you can look around again. um, so the other thing that's a little different is the concept of before and after. Before fights start and after fights are over. So what you can do here, right, is you can sort of understand where the threats are. If before the fight starts, if you know the tracer's right side, then you know that, okay, I need to position a little bit further away. You need to make sure that, I'm a little smart about it, maybe play around corners, make it very hard for the tracer to get on me, maximize distance, be ready to turn and maybe shoot a bit, right? And when you're looking around, obviously, all these times you're sort of looking for threats, or you're looking maybe to enable somebody, right? Or looking to like that's sort of the same principles, right, for all of these. But before and after fight is something very simple you can do, right? You can look to, if it's after a fight, you can look to set up, and you can look to maybe enable someone so they can do more value on your team. Or if it's before a fight, you can sort of look for threats and look to approach it that way, right? And like, so this is sort of threats, this is sort of like enable. Right, we can also say like before fights, you can also like look at your team, and we'll talk about that like later. Okay. Okay, so this is something else that's like sort of difficult, and I think a lot of people like this is like very hard, and it's not something that people expect you to do. But if you're shooting something, right, and obviously when you're shooting something, you have a general LOS and where you're shooting that, right? You can notice something in that LOS, notice something else. So for example, let's say I'm shooting this over here, right? And well, just died instantly. But let's say I'm shooting over here, right? I'm over here. I'm shooting over here, right? And I notice my bot there is 1. So I'll immediately turn right after and like orb this person, right? So even though I'm shooting over here, right, I'm able to see that ball's there, and my bot's low HP, so I'll immediately turn after, quickly give a harmony orb, help, and then while I'm reloading, then I'll go somewhere else, right? And then I'll notice over here, or I'll notice like there's a tracer there, so I'm shooting like over here, right? And like I notice there's a tracer on the left side, so I'll turn immediately after and push the tracer out, right? And like obviously this only is viable when you've got like a really solid LOS and you can like sort of see things very well. Okay. That's pretty difficult. So now we're gonna go into what I think is like the most important thing that I think people don't do, which I think is difficult to do again, but if you can get good at it, you insanely get a lot more value. And the way I sort of look at this is sort of like say people say they have like a photogenic memory and like they see something, they remember it, right? It's sort of the same concept where I sort of think of it sort of as like updating information. So what I mean by updating information is like, let's say you're playing, right, and you sort of see an enemy over here, right, and then you sort of go back and you start shooting at someone over here, right. You remember that there's an enemy there, right, so remember to later turn around and like shoot this person, right. But let's say you shoot this person over here, right, and then you turn around over here, you shoot this person, right, and then you turn back like while you're reloading. So let me give you a better example. I can use it over here. So like over here. So we're shooting this person, okay, and then like you reload, right, and like that. I'm trying to find a way to explain this, sorry. Basically the concept is if you're shooting someone, right, and then you reload and you sort of like see someone else moved, you remember that person's there now and not there before. So for instance, the first point A, the person's there, right, you start shooting something and you reload, and all of a sudden you notice the person moved, and then you remember, okay, that person moved from point A to point B, right. So this concept of sort of understanding like, okay, the tracer was there, right, I'm shooting the Reinhardt, and then I reloading, I'm looking around while I'm reloading, I see the tracer's moving and getting closer to me. Now I know that tracer is becoming more of a threat. I need to deal with that tracer better, right? So sort of this concept of like updating images in your head, right? So this is sort of called like updating. So the biggest thing from this, right, first is you need to actually like know, you need to know who your threats are, because you don't want to like, you don't want to update everyone on the enemy team because that's just way too much information to store, right? What you want to identically do is only like know and update the people that are important and that you care about, right? Like for example, if you're playing Zen, you care about the ball, you care about the tracer, right? And I'll talk about threats in a second. So you need to know where the threats are, like knowing the threats, and then you need to obviously you want to update them, update like in your head sort of um like the locations if they move. So, and obviously scouting can help with this, and that's in a different video, the alt tracking scouting planning video. So now let's quickly talk about threats really, really, really fast. So threats, there's different types of them. And based off of the type of hero you're on, right, there's different ways to see what threatens you. So you've got like one-shot heroes, or one-shot threats that are at a distance, right? So you've got like Widow, Hanzo, right? And I can like keep going on with those. You've got one-shot threats that are close, right? So for instance, Reaper, Doom, technically McCree because you can stun fan hammer you, right? And then you've also got like flankers and displacement, right? Flankers and displacement. So this would be like, Ball, Tracer, Reaper still because he's still a flanker, Doomfist, right? You could technically say Genji. And then the other one is sort of like if someone's like it's very brawly, right? Like they're sort of holding close. That's also sort of a threat because they can run into you, right? And that'd be like Ryan or Winston, depending on if they're trying to run a cleave comp. So again, like to sort of summarize this, right? Like the way to look at this is you sort of have this picture in your head of where the enemy is. So you're focusing on one person, right? You see the tracer's right side, then you shoot the Reinhardt for like 1 or 2 seconds. You're reloading, then you realize the tracer moved somewhere else, right? So in your head, you sort of say, okay, the tracer was there. Now it's updated in my head. Now it's over here, right? And you're like, okay, I don't have to worry about the tracer anymore because I don't have to worry about the tracer because the tracer's still there. Then maybe you start shooting someone else, and then you stabilize, and you notice the tracer's getting closer to you. Then you update it again. That in your head, you're like, okay, now I need to maybe stop doing what I'm doing and actually pressure the tracer, right? So you're sort of like constantly sort of understanding where the threat is, right? And you're sort of updating that in your head and understanding how to position or play based off the enemy aggression, enemy threats. Okay, so that's just sort of like the concept of like updating information, right? That you can see, right? The other type of thing that you can see, obviously, and this is very straightforward, is straight up kill feed. Like, look at the kill feed and like, what does that mean to you? Mean to you? Their ball's dead. You're Zen. You can take more space, right? Like, you're up 2 or 3, right, and you're full HP. Better start moving forward, right? So, or you're down 1 or 2. Maybe you need to try and trade, or you need to try and play slow and like turn, right? So sort of understand the kill feed, right, and understand how that affects your team. The other thing, right, is this up here, right? This was all positioning. This concept of like thinking in your head, right? This is positioning. But now you can do the same thing, right, with CDs. Whoops, we'll sort of like you can do the same concept, okay, with CDs. You can do the same concept with ultimates. And with CDs, right, it's just like, okay, they don't have make cryo anymore. What does that mean for me? Well, I can maybe discord the Mei, we can kill the Mei. Oh, they don't have trance anymore. Maybe I can trance aggro and push forward, right? So sort of like constantly taking in the enemy's like CDs, and then maybe it hits like something called a trigger, which I'll explain in another video. And then you can like get more value out of it, right? Because again, CDs is information, right? And there is some action based off that, right? Alt is also information, and there's an action off that. Okay. But the biggest thing I think that people don't do enough of is this one right over here. This concept of like updating like information and the positioning, right? Then after that, I think then you do the CDs, then you do the ultimates. Because the positioning is sort of how an enemy team can actually pressure you and go aggro. Okay, next. Okay, we have like 2 or 3 more topics. I'm trying to keep this short. I don't know how long I'll end up going, but I'm trying to keep it short. Listening. Okay, I'm not gonna go too much on this, but this is a thing that I think a lot of people tunnel on and like don't really get. You can talk and you can keep talking, right? But if you don't listen to other people on your team, right, then you're not essentially playing as a team. You're playing as an individual, and you're hoping enemy team just you're hoping your team follows you, right? If you're talking a lot, right, that your team is listening, so you should also give them the favor of also when they say things, listen to them too, right? So listening is very, very, very important. And there are a lot of situations, right, where you might get really like you might get like steamrolled, or you might feel like nothing's working, right? And you're calming a lot and you're trying your absolute best, right? And the best way to go about this, right, is sort of just chill, like relax, and like just relax your mind, like just chill for a few seconds, right? And instead of talking and like thinking like really hard, focus on listening to your teammates, right? And that'll help so much. And I think you like almost you can pretty much do this for any role, unless you're a main support, and that's if your main support is like if you're a main support and you're really vocal, then like it might be a bit more difficult. But like any role can sort of, except main support, unless in that situation, right, can sort of just like, okay, I'm dying a lot, I'm dying first a lot. You can just chill for a second, right, and sort of just listen more to your team, and then look to like after what they say something, maybe like make sure you're going with that game plan, and maybe that'll help. Maybe you were tunneling before, maybe you were doing something by yourself, right? So sort of just chill for a second, listen, right? The other way I think you can approach this, right? How you can do this is after you die, right? There's breathing, right? You can just sort of just like take like a second, just like breathe in and just breathe out, right? Like so you breathe in for 2 seconds, right? And you hold it and you breathe out. That sometimes helps for people. Different people work differently. Obviously with bio, you can get up, maybe get quickly grab some water, right? You can quickly walk around, just like quickly just try and reset. If you're in game, there might be other things that help you, maybe water, maybe just listening, maybe just calming down and just grounding yourself. There's a grounding technique called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that involves senses that you can maybe try and do. So just something like that that'll help you calm you down, and then it'll allow you to like focus on listening and then recenter you with your team. Okay. So that's sort of listening. Next one, awareness of your own team. Team. So this is really important, and I've seen this happen way too much, where you have someone on your team who's like a flanker or maybe like a Winston, and they just jump in without even like thinking. Is the team ready for him to go in? Right? Is the tracer ready? You know, as Winston, I'm just gonna jump in. Oh, I don't care if a tracer's ready. I'm just gonna jump in. Right? Doesn't even check. Right? So sort of having this basic awareness of sort of saying, okay, you know, is my team ready to engage? Right? If I'm Winston, is my tracer ready to go in with me? Right? If my tracer is not ready to go in as Winston, then I'm just gonna sort of like not take poke, not give up my position, and sort of just like chill. Right? Opposite counter positive, you could say it's tracer. Right? If your Winston's not ready to go in, then you can just pressure the tanks and sort of like chill. Right? If your Winston is ready to go in, then you can sort of look to go set up and then look to dive with your Winston. Right? So sort of like this understanding of like, is your team or like the person is your team or like the person you're looking to engage with. You do are they ready, right? And if they're not, then what do you do? Then what, what's your role? Another example is Kree, right? How many times do we see, you know, Kree says he wants to go flank, right? Well, also think about it too. Does Kree want to go first in the flank? Like, do you want to go show yourself first and like flank and stun the backline, and then your Ryan goes in, right? If that's what you want to do, sure. But then you still gotta make sure Ryan's ready, right? I mean, Ryan might be in spawn and you go, and that's just throwing, right? Or maybe you want your Ryan to set tempo, so you're aware of where your Ryan is, and your Ryan pushes, and you're like, okay, cool, my Ryan's pushing. Now I'm gonna go in, and then you look to sort of push and you go aggro. So in total, it's just this concept of like understanding that like I've seen it so happen so many times where people aren't aware of their counterpart that they're looking to engage with or as a team, right? Like someone's still coming back, and you don't really check and see if your full team is ready. Okay, and if your full team isn't ready, making sure you know what you should do while you're waiting. Okay, another really fast topic, right, is if you're dead. If you're dead, right, you can give info. You can give info to your team. Right, and this info can obviously help your team, and your team can listen and they can listen to the info, and then they can do an action, right? So for example, you know, if you're like, I always say the first person dead, right? That way, like, you don't hear like 5 people who are dead just cobbing like a crap ton of information, but depends on your team, right? But if you're first person dead, you can say stuff like, you know, we're up one, we're up one, right? We're down one, right? We're even, right? We're, you know, low heals, right? Maybe your main support like died in the comp. Maybe you have no heals, right? You can maybe say something like they have no heals, right? Which then means like we can just sort of play slow and any damage is good and you just win the long fight, right? You can maybe say something like they are closing EMP, right? So that then means like try and force the Sombra out, right? Or maybe you're saying like we are closing beat, right? And like you can play off that, right? And if you actually notice, all of these are what are known as dynamic calls, right? And there was a video for that too. So that's you can anyone can do this, right? Normally you do if you're dead. Don't overdo it, right? Don't have 5 people do it. Trying to like again, first person dead can do it. Depends on your team, but don't overdo that. Next thing or last thing, right? What is like the easy way to sort of like work on this? Like I just talked about a whole bunch of different things, right? So how do you actually like the easy way to build this up? To build awareness. And I'll tell you right now, there is no easy way. It's gonna be hard work. It's gonna be a lot of hard work and a lot of time. Okay. And there's a few ways, right? I was talking to a player, his name is Micro, and Micro said a very simple way of doing it, right? Which is go back and watch your replay codes. Go back and watch VOD. Spend like 15 minutes, right? I always say 15 minutes because I don't think you really need to do more of you a day, every day, 15 minutes, and go see how you died. How you died, right? And based off how you died, ask yourself why, right? And then sort of like go into understanding why, right? And then eventually that'll probably lead to you not being aware of something. Oh, I wasn't aware that they had Blizzard here. Oh, I wasn't aware that their Tracer, was going this way. So I need to like understand, the flankers and whatnot. I wasn't aware they had Pulse, right? The other way I actually also think about it, right, is I think building muscle memory is really, 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 really important. Building muscle memory. And like it's like a little different than like obviously like working out, like all that type of stuff, but like when I mean muscle memory, it's like the thinking process, right? Where like if you start getting in a habit of like as maybe Zen, like playing a little bit further back at start of fights where the enemy team you don't know what the comp they're on, so you play a little bit further back so you can live at the start, and then you see that other comp where you can take more space and you go forward, right? You start like you need to like build a habit of sort of like understanding their threats, like build a habit of sort of like detecting threats, right? And then like understanding what to do based off that. And I'll tell you right now, like this itself is gonna hard tank your mechanics. Your mechanics, like your maybe like and like other stuff, comms might go down a lot. Why? Because you're gonna be doing this a lot. You're gonna be thinking. So for I'd probably say 1 to 2 weeks, right? You're not gonna be playing amazing. But I guarantee you, after a while, if you actually hard grind this, right, this will become muscle memory, and you won't even need to think about it because it'll just come naturally. And then these two will like go up. They'll go up even higher because your positioning will maybe be better, right? So like essentially like practicing comp, right? Practice scouting threats, like positioning around them, right? Maybe like saying important things or practice listening, right? Instead of saying too much. If you say too much, right? And it'll affect your play for sure because you're not used to it. But in the end, it will end up being better because you have become a smarter player and you're able to, get more value in situations where you normally weren't able to. Okay. Let's see here if there's anything else. Okay, so that's it for this topic. I will be doing another one at the end. I also want to give some credit to people I talked to. I talked to Baroy from Boston, Gasaurus from Shock, Sword from Drifters, Bostis from X Gladiators. I talked we talked. I sort of like asked for like anything I missed because I've typed up my Spark notes really fast, and I knew I was missing some stuff. So they added a few points here and there that I missed. So thank you guys, I appreciate it. And yeah.